Nope.
On the
Oh, blue line. Okay, there's good.
Great, thank you so much. Well, hello everyone. It's good to see everyone. I've been suffering a little bit from a terrible man's cold for the past 2 weeks. I know, the worst illness ever. And it was in fact so bad that I opted to pass on attending the live sessions last week. It was that bad, but I saw Dan was facilitating that last meeting. So thank you for that. I enjoyed the recording. But with today's theme of resilience, I'm back and hopefully stronger. There are a couple of interesting things that stood out to me in this chapter, how people might think differently about resilience and recovery, and that could be a possibility for discussion. But for YouTube out there, my name is Matthias Sieber. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Logs, and together with Gimbal Labs and in community, we're hosting these Emergent Strategy Book Club meetings. This is week 8, I believe. And today and tomorrow, we'll be covering the chapter on Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown on resilience. Those are pages 123 to 150 in the printed copy. And tomorrow's applied lens is on tokenomics. So every Thursday, we kind of look at, okay, the chapter that we've covered the previous day, how could that apply to tokenomics specifically? And I think with resilience and the recent discussions that many of us have been through at least one cycle before, but I think there is an emergent topic of a possible ban on crypto, for example, right? Or maybe that's kind of like the doomsday scenario, whether that is actually feasible or not. Might be an interesting thought experiment, but there are certainly good questions how we would, as a community, address a possible ban on crypto or in various forms. However, I propose today not to necessarily fall into that discussion, as there are a couple of, I think, very interesting topics that emerge in this chapter on resilience. For me, just my top 3 I'll share, and I'd invite you to put your stickies on there as well. For me, it's no secret, I'm a mediator, right? Logs, my company is also in the business of connecting mediators and advocating for mediation more broadly, create more meaningful opportunities for mediation. And the book, and especially that chapter, to me reads as a direct advocacy piece for mediation. Granted, I'm totally biased, so it might be that you have not picked up on that, and that is totally fine. There's a lot of great other pieces in there, and let's explore those. In the broader sense, also the topic of transformative justice was brought up, right? The author, as we learned in her biography, is a social justice advocate, a racial justice advocate, and a transformative justice advocate, right? She's been doing that work, and this book is part of that work as well. And then, because the book or this chapter, just like many chapters, starts with definitions on resilience, right? What stood out to me is that the type of resilience or the definitions that's being utilized are not 100% necessarily in line with what I believe she actually points out as resilience, and that is what I liken it to kintsugi, which is, you know, the one art form based in Japanese traditions where imperfections are essentially you could say repaired, fixed, or highlighted with gold, for example, right? And that is in contrast versus a simple, what I call reset or recovery, right? I was sick, right? And a simple recovery would be, okay, I am back to my previous status, but, you know, I did not come back stronger, right, necessarily. Something that we might associate more with resistance training if you talk about physical adaptations. So at this point in time, I'd like to be quiet and see what other broad themes emerged for you, or if you share of some of these themes that I pointed out as important discussion matters. So please feel free to raise your hand or come off mute. We are a smaller group, so definitely it is fine with me to come off mute. Looking at the group. I see an OM, right? Resilience against L1 KYC.
I want to. One of the really interesting concepts in this part of the book is, one concept in particular is the concept of healing, and she mentioned healing as a right of every human being. Every human being has the right to heal the wounds and start over again. And in particular, I think that in terms of at personal level, but also at organizational level, because organizations, for example, when make front to some difficulties, terrible difficulties, financial, or the losing of talent, or the scarcity of ideas, and they get behind in the market to other competitors. In general, the organizations make front to many serious risks, and to the point of go down heavily and need to start over again, and that take place in many occasions in the reality of the markets. But the interesting, the beautiful point in that part is how healing is a human right. It's really obvious, but it's really beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That is true, and I missed that. So thank you for sharing that. One thing that I noticed again is throughout the book, and I think it became more apparent once we had a discussion on the chapter of fractals, that at various scales and various scopes, right, there is this concept that applies to on a small level and on a big level, right? You mentioned individuals and organizations as well.
Yes, also she not only mentioned the concept, she also describes the process. She described, for example, that in that low point, you are starting to healing. You are starting the process of the healing process. It's really interesting when you are down and for some reason, and you are suffering, and you are starting in some point also the healing process. It's really good. It's really obvious, but really beautiful. But it's the resistance, huh? It's the resistance to not go ahead with the situations. Maybe you are hugging the situations with too strong, in a strong way, and you can't. You don't want to be free of that situation. But okay, that's my point. Thanks.
Yeah, so right. So when you're down and you start the healing process, right? One of the instances, I'm not sure if she mentioned abuse in this form, but right. So okay, on page 141, there's a beautiful paragraph, talking about support from friends and community, right? Let me just read it actually. So again, page 141. You have the right to ask for support from your friends, community. It really helps to find neutral mediators or mediation teams to support conversations that the abusive dynamics may make difficult. Sometimes the feelings of things being unresolved will keep pulling you back into the conversation. Mediation can help draw the line. And I just wanted to point out this part, right? Because sometimes you're down, but external forces keep, putting you down and over that the healing process really cannot really faster in a sense that you yourself can heal. And I think that this chapter, as you mentioned, there are nice I guess gold nuggets in here of actual how to get out of the situation and how to come out stronger. That is certainly, again, my bias towards mediation. I highlighted this whole chapter up quite a bit, and but even the quotes themselves that she utilizes are wonderful pieces as well. That I think we can spend hours just discussing what these do for us.
I wrote your name a couple times in the margins, Matthias, while reading it. One of the concepts like this how do we do it, and more importantly, I think, like, why do we do it is I like her, it's almost like a call to action where she says real time is slower than social media time near the end of the chapter, and encouraging us not to make our pain viral before we've even had a chance to feel it, and just recognizing the link that plays, right? I can make my pain part of the world's pain before I have a chance to think about it. But if I choose not to, there's real results of that. But it resonates with me so much in this industry where we're all working, because it can feel really hard to take the time that things really take when consuming some media.
Yeah, that is very interesting that you say, because we are, as a community, a network of sorts, right? And I mean, social media sites, like social networks, it is even more so apparent, right? So I think what you said is very profound. To me, that means if I have a very impactful experience I could label that as a negative, painful experience, for example, instead of washing my laundry in public, which has its merits, but I should probably sit with the feeling and deal with that. I've been funnily enough, years ago, right, whenever I was searching on Google, including Google Scholar and any types of search sites for on any topic regarding mediation, right? It always came back to, oh, did you mean meditation? Or I would just get meditation as a search result. And that's certainly not what I wanted, right? But it's interesting because, to me, I've been recently for the last month, again, picked up my meditation practice to, sit with my thoughts, my emotions, sensations. One interesting topic that we haven't discussed yet, but she brought up in several occasions in the book is somatics, right? How do you feel? Like the knowledge that your body has. I did as part of a racial justice training program. We actually had a session on somatics. So I got introduced in 2020, 2019, early 2020 on it, and it was very, very interesting. But yeah, what you said, sitting with the things before sharing it, or like further give a thing, a thought, a feeling more space, and the effect that it then might have in those, whether they're relay nodes or block producers, if I might link people to these very different tasks, it is very interesting. And the last thing that I'd like to say on that as a response is that the why certainly is important. In this chapter, page 148, Adrian mentions, in my mediations, why is often the game-changing possibility opening question. And I have noticed that in my own mediations, no meditations, mediations as well. And it applies to many, many situations where multiple people, or even just yourself, are the only person that are involved. So thank you for pointing that out. Apologies, A, for having your hand up there for so long. I feel I need to make up for weeks of my silence. So, A, please go ahead. We can't hear you yet. There we go.
How about now? It should be able to hear me.
Very lovely. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, what I said was, yeah, no worry, dude. It gave me some time to actually compose my thoughts. Earlier, James mentioned what Peter shared with us yesterday, and with regards to the teacup or the small handle cup conversation. Well, he was telling us what Ansula meant in different cultures, the sort of different gendered definition, and so I just kind of want to go back to that really quickly, to a point which I brought up there, which is this notion of bringing your whole self to work, or to any sort of public setting. And the point that brought up there was, it's a thing which is often communicated, but the weight of what that would mean for people's mental health isn't really communicated enough, or well enough. And part of that is reflected, or part of that is kind of made so much worse with the fact that the internet is unforgiving, right? It's one thing to do something like that, bring your full self or whatever to work, in an environment where people's memories, if you did something embarrassing, they'll forget it, given a decent amount of time. Yeah, this is super important, coming back to this idea of understanding incentives, creating an environment where people can actually understand incentives in alignment with protecting their own heart or emotional and mental as well health, right? By thinking about boundaries, right, which are hopefully present within an incentive system, right? Because otherwise, without that, then you have this corporate type, faceless, empathy less incentive structure, which doesn't really care about your emotional well-being or your mental. All it cares about is exploiting you, and if it can get you to completely expose yourself in a way where you're way too vulnerable, I think that is something worth thinking about. And so just quickly bring it back to the book, actually. The page previous to the one that Matthias just read, or 147, there's a cool bit at the bottom here, which I'll just quickly read a few sentences. The subtitle is Why. Listen with why as a framework. People mess up. We lie, exaggerate, betray, hurt, and abandon each other. We lie, we hear that something bad has happened. It makes us feel anger, pain, confusion, and sadness. But to move immediately to punishment means that we stay on the surface of what happened. To transform the conditions of the wrongdoing, we have to ask ourselves and each other why, even especially when we are scared of the answer. So, one quick thing I suppose that kind of brought to mind there is incentives as they have manifested nowadays are embedded into opinionated algorithms. And, as we have come to discover, emotions such as anger or, any similar ones create engagement, right? And engagement creates a metric which big tech can be able to, to profit from, right? From an advertising standpoint. So, yeah, I suppose, my thoughts are somewhat all over the place, but I feel like there are a few points here and there that I wanted to touch on. And before I just hand it back, the points which I've contributed here within the mural board are the one to do with KYC, which I feel is quite, if anyone has been on Twitter over the last few days, is quite poignant and quite timely. I'll expand on that a little bit, but I'll just quickly touch on these other two. So the self-healing consensus, which is what happened within the Cardano ecosystem. If a consensus or decision-making framework is designed well enough, whenever catastrophe does happen, I will expand on why that helps this conversation. Catastrophe, it's important for it to it's important for it to basically heal, right, without a whole bunch of, because again, decision making frameworks are super important to a community or to society. So the fact that it actually did that, and we still, as far as I know, we don't know what led to the that weird downtime in terms of nodes synchronizing on the network. And then anti-fragility, it's not just understanding it's not just sort of like going back to what Matthias said, it's not just coming back to health, but it's going beyond, right? Beyond what your median or homeostatic baseline was previously. So just to bring it back to the KYC thing, to bring it home, I'm of the opinion that introducing, so Charles made a video where he gave the example of you know, Russia, China, US, for example. So these are huge nation states which are most of the time at odds with each other. And he made the argument that at layer one, I think he made it layer one because previously there's a reference where he says that apparently it should happen on the side chain, but then the last video from like yesterday, I'll just go with the layer one because this is the whole point of contention, and he hasn't really come back and said it's not going to be on layer one. Or what he's suggesting is that is not that it's not going to be on layer one. My whole thing is, if it's at layer one, what then starts to happen is that there's a bifurcation. There's a domino effect. Once, you know, say America starts to impose its will at the base layer, you know, that will then, you know, just create this unhealthy bifurcation, which will then have second and third order effects with regards to valuations of different assets, and some being tainted and, you know, some not, and it just creates this environment which I think is not good. And so to bring it back to resilience, I think that base layer should be neutral, because in doing so we create sort of tributary environments, you know, in this case side chains, which people can be able to have to hold different opinions, and to create, you know, small environments where people can make mistakes and can you know, can find redemption. So yeah, I think this is super important, and we ought to resist things which compromise integrity at a fundamental level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing all of that. I'll have to watch the recording because I did not take notes right now. You said a lot there, so appreciate it. James, did you want to follow up on the why conversation? But it is certainly a, you know, the why in all of this, right? I think is
it's a great case study, right? This, I think what we've witnessed, my greatest takeaway from the last few days on social media on this topic are, you know, the occasionally surprising ratio of talk to information, right? And what people will latch onto and think is the real thread. And we all know there's cases of this that stretch beyond this ecosystem where we're working right now. And so it's I don't know, it's, if there were nothing else to do, it would be really interesting to like run a quick study on that, but I know that's not going to happen anytime soon. I think, but I think this is the opportunity, is to always be in a stance where we are going out into the community or out into the world and asking people why, right? When we see misinformation or, you know, misrepresented information, to just ask somebody, hey, why do you think that? Might be the best thing with the least amount of effort, you know, to just nudge people towards that. Hey, have you thought about that? But I was also thinking while I was talking about smallness, I really appreciate that point. And that was the first sticky I added to the board here, was we can't back into this. And that was another one of what I thought were the critical points in this chapter. And she uses the word small. I'll read just this one quickly too. Eventually, transformative practices that begin small will demand new societal structures. I suspect we can't back into this, demanding that our government provide a form of justice that even we in our movements do not know how to practice in real time. I think that speaks for itself. I think it applies to side chains and their relationship with main chains as much as it does to ourselves in whatever movements we're involved in, Cardano and otherwise, and what we demand of whoever we perceive to have more power than us. And then she finishes, sorry, by saying, so let's grow our expertise in this.
Thank you, James. Harsher, what do you think?
Did you talk to me?
Yes, we haven't heard
Okay.
from
So
you
I
today.
just saw Juan's hand, so I was like, did
Yeah,
Matthias
I
say
called on
Juan?
you. I called on you and then Juan. So Harsher and then Juan.
You first, Hans.
So I am actually pretty confused about transformative justice, specifically taking from. I'm actually confused about the word justice as well, because it seems I don't know what to make of it at this point. But I like the word transformative because it makes sense to me. But I'd really like to know what you all think of the word justice, because transformative seems kind of obvious, but I could be wrong. So yeah.
Wonderful. That is a big topic, and I can speak for hours on that topic. Sebastian and Juan, who were participating in our recent mediation training as well, they know that I'm very biased in favor of transformative mediation. That falls under transformative justice as well. Long story short, I think we're just looking at the book again, right? Because what it does, part of it is, right, in the book, right, Transformative Justice, this is on page 133. Transformative justice in the context of emergent strategy asks us to consider how to transform toxic energy, right? A mentioned anger, for example, earlier. Toxic energy, hurt, legitimate pain, and conflict into solutions, right? To get under the wrong, find a way to coexist, be energy moving towards life together. So the last part is a little bit, well, what does it mean, right? There are certain processes that assist with that. Transformative mediation is one aspect. Peace circles, in the US, the whole alternative dispute resolution space actually heavily borrows from indigenous peace building practices like peace circles. That is part of that work as well. That's how I understand it. And I want to stop at this moment, but definitely would like to continue the conversation on transformative justice at some later time. Great. Juan.
There you go. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, this chapter is very interesting, very, very rich of content. One of the things that has struck me the most is the way she describes the society, the actual society that we live in, when she says that we really we destroy each other. We do whatever we need to do as a society, or as a group or individual, to put others down by the means of getting together, and that is something that if we think transformative society, that will take a lot of time to be done pacifically. Transformative justice needs to happen little by little with things like this, with the groups that expose and what's the word? Discuss situations, and then it's as for me transformative has to do with destruction, with evolution. I mean, according to the book, with recreation, with talking ground up. Another term that she uses is inside out, reclaiming relationship with the earth. And those are the things that we just cannot expect that the change that we are looking for are going to happen right at the corner of the street. corner of the block. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of commitment from many circles, I will say. And but eventually we'll as long as we as society we adopt, listen to each other, and also not to see others as enemies and try to avoid all the the concept of winning. Instead of thinking of winning all the time, think about the way that there is nothing to win. I mean, everybody wins. It's a very interesting concept, especially now with what we are proposing through the third generation of the fourth industrial revolution, if I can to say. I think it's a process, a very long and careful process that is going to happen, and we just need to be patient and start doing our things in our small communities, little by little, get to the consensus of kind of having people drop their guns and start, instead of fighting, look for reasons for why. She actually described fear as when people feel fear, they destroy the opponent instead of finding the roots of the fear in themselves. And that says a lot. I think these are as many other chapters. I think all of them. This chapter highlighted to me mostly that aspect that the change is to happen, but it's going to happen little by little. Back to you.
Thank you. And to stick with our format, I propose for A to close out this part of our meeting, and then maybe Jonathan and or Dan can think about the most next elegant steps and tell us what they thought about this session. What's next? So A.
Awesome. Yeah, the audio should be working. Cool. In under a minute. Yeah, just a quick point of clarification. James, you're right in terms of how sort of whispers can happen and, propagate things which are off. To that, I would add that I think that a stitch in time saves 9. And what's interesting about this, whether or not, say, for example, a key thing is whether it was suggested to happen on layer 1 or not, I think it's important to have that conversation, because even with that scenario, some people are like, yeah, I don't see the big deal in it. I think, yeah, stitch in time saves 9, like in the same way, a cancerous growth ought to be dealt with as early as possible before it metastasizes. So I think there's definitely value in sort of approaching things, sort of addressing them pretty early on there. So the concluding point I want to make is actually, again, on the same page that Matthias read, but just I think a little bit higher here, and also to Harsha's point, page 33, the second paragraph, which means, and a quote, which means transformative justice, transformative justice that transforms the root cause of injustice is necessary at every scale. But I'm particularly focused on how it becomes the common orientation and practice of movements for social change, peace, for liberation. The point that came to mind with regards to this is actually something that is kind of like a default state, or at least in the context of London and the infrastructure. So in London, like, for the most part, you don't have particular areas which are predominantly like of a particular economic class and sort of, devoid of other people of like working class, and so on. And that's because the idea of social housing has kind of been required to be available in all sorts of different environments. So the kind of stratification doesn't manifest in sort of having like the equivalent of gated communities. And this is important because, you know, it's not just the material things which define, you know, people in this particular context, but it's also ideologies or sort of, you know, different ethics and moral values that they hold, and empathy, right? The fact that, you know, someone who say super rich can be, you know, living next to someone who isn't particularly so, I think just that structurally makes a society more tolerant and more resilient. So yeah, and I think one of the manifestations of that is in construction of new housing, there's a requirement to have a certain proportion of it to be social housing, which is basically housing which people in different in difficult economic situations are able to be sort of provided accommodation for via, you know, through the government and so on. But yeah, architecture, bringing it back to architecture, there's value in that and how it relates to this. Yeah, thank you very much. John, take it away.
This whole piece is very relevant to me at the moment with personal well, yeah, everything reverts to the personal, isn't it? Yeah, it's all you can really relate to the world on is what's happening to you at the time. And so I'm going through things that are a new experience for me. I'm having to interact with the justice system, which doesn't feel very just in any way, shape, or form. And it fundamentally makes you think about, you know, what do you believe about the world? What do you believe about your place in it? You know, right the way back to human rights, and you know, what does a human deserve at birth? That it is, you know, ubiquitous. Everybody should have this, and so all these bake into you know, a view on the world, a worldview from early in your life that forms how well you deal with conflict and with self-righteousness and feelings of injustice. And I think that you know, I've always, and it does become a pride thing. You always think of yourself as being resilient, as being, you know, mature, and I'm a provider. I'm a strong back for others to lean on. But that's all time and circumstance, because it can go away very quickly. And really, what you need to do is have an acknowledgement of the fragility that we are in and we are dealing with, and find a way to continue regardless. And a lot of this, what I'm going back to think about is, you know, what is my starting position? Am I thinking that I'm suffering injustice, or is this just the state of the world, in that there is injustice in the world experienced by everybody at varying degrees at various points? And so, you know, when I'm trying to resolve hurt within myself, who am I thinking of? Am I thinking of me, or is it actually I'm thinking of others? And I don't think we get very far by thinking of ourselves, because if we think just within ourselves, then everybody is at fault around us. But actually, we have to acknowledge that others are suffering, others have been through it, others are forged from their environments in ways that mean that we have to acknowledge and honor and distance ourselves from reacting in a way that would perpetuate others' hurts before our own, almost. And I think then that's the only really real way you come to resilience. Like you have to be able to acknowledge the environment you're in and the conditions that are pressing in on you as a result of hurt elsewhere. And that's probably the first, the starting point that you should get to, is that to be happy, you have to acknowledge that everything is hurt, everything is damaged, and you're giving leeway to others' behaviors and things you feel is injustice. You have to give them leeway for you to then feel happy, joyful, and be able to get back to that again. There's a quote that I've often been told, that unforgiveness is like drinking poison, trying to hurt the other person, and really that's the truth of it, is that unless you can wrap that all up within yourself and find a resolution within, by looking outside and saying, okay, this is hurting them, this is what the damage is being before now, that I may be contributing that or maybe not, but regardless, it's still there. How do we move on from this? How do I resolve my own feelings, and then take action and behaviors that are the ones that I want to be taking, rather than the ones that I am forced to take out of reaction. And those sorts of things are the stuff that's been bubbling up from. And I haven't read this chapter; I've just absorbed it through this session. So, it's but of course, I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, because this is the difficulties I'm going through have been going on for 2 years. So yeah, every step, every process is a learning. If you don't come out stronger, like the kintsugi, then you remain smashed. If you do come out stronger, you've got gold running through your veins. So here we go. End on that.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Dan, I think you have like 40 seconds to follow up that.
Okay, a very, very quick one. If you can hear me okay, because my internet's very up and down tonight. Yeah, I was thinking on what Jonathan was saying. And a wise old friend of mine always said to me, you have a choice, pick your fights. If you decide you are going to fight, you go all in. If you're not prepared to go all in, put your hobnail boots on and kick the figurative out of your opponent, walk away from it. You will feel a lot happier doing that than half-heartedly having a little poke at them. So he did this, said this to me when I was going through my divorce. And he said, don't look at the obvious. Go at them from whichever angle you can. And at the time, my wife had legal aid and was getting her solicitor to write me nasty letters every day. So I attacked her legal aid because she was working and she shouldn't have been getting it. Letters stopped. I was so much happier. So yeah, that's not completely relevant, but to the resilience thing, if you can make that decision, are you going to go all in, or are you at the end of the day, are you going to be happy just going, I haven't got time for this rubbish, I'm just going to back off, they can get on with their lives. I've walked away from thousands of pounds because I'm happier having done so.
Thank you so much. And absolutely, Juan just pointed out in the chat, right? He also put that sticky on dominance versus peace. So if you haven't read this chapter, I'd like for you to encourage reading this and maybe reread it as well. But tomorrow we'll continue our discussion on resilience and how we recover and transform with the lens on more so on tokenomics. So thank you everyone for participating. Thank you for being okay with being called out and called on rather. And so much appreciated. I look forward to digest this session myself and gain hopefully greater insights from the conversation. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Matthias. Great sesh. Is this somebody writing hi, FYI, or is that somebody's name? Can't tell. If anybody, so if anybody wants to start drawing some parallels to tokenomics in this chapter tomorrow, feel free to jump in. I'm not sure who this is unless somebody speaks up. So yeah, well, we can crowdsource it tomorrow too. I won't erase this just in case they show up. But thanks. All right, see ya tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the day.
See ya.
Yes. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Another great one. Thanks.
See you soon.